The city buzzed outside with honking taxis, rushing footsteps, and clamor of a weekday morning. But inside the gleaming marble halls of Carter National Bank, the air was cooler, quieter, and filled with a crisp scent of polished stone and inked paperwork, the kind of place that seemed designed to make ordinary people feel small under its tall ceilings and echoing floors. A dozen customers moved about in hushed tones, some seated in the waiting area, others speaking to sharply dressed tellers behind long counters of glass and steel. But among the suits, briefcases, and handbags, a girl of just 12 stood out, a small figure with a pink backpack slung over her shoulders, a folded deposit slip in one hand, and an envelope pressed tightly in the other as if it contained the very essence of her pride. Her name was Maya Johnson, and though her shoes squeaked faintly as she walked across the marble, she moved with a careful determination that made her seem older than her years, the weight of her little envelope heavier than it appeared. For inside it was a fruit of months of saving, coins from mowing lawns in her neighborhood, small bills her grandmother gave her on her birthday, tips from helping neighbors carry groceries, and the allowance she had resisted spending on candy or trinkets, all collected for one purpose. Today she would open her very first bank account. She had heard her teacher once say that saving money meant planting seeds for future, and she liked that image. She had watered those seeds with patience, and today she wanted to see them take root in the world of adults, in a real bank where her name would be written not on a chalkboard but on official paper. But as she stepped up to the counter, her small frame barely reaching the edge, the teller behind the glass barely glanced before arching an eyebrow. Susan Miller, in her late 30s, wore her navy blazer like armor and tapped her manicured nails impatiently on the desk, as if every second spent was a second wasted. She had been working at the bank for over a decade and had developed a certain posture of superiority, a way of deciding who mattered based on how they dressed, how they spoke, and how much money they carried. When her eyes flicked to Maya's pink backpack and then to the small envelope clutched in her fingers, Susan's lips curled into a smirk that wasn't quite a smile. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice pitched high as if speaking to a toddler, "this isn't a piggy bank. Did you get lost on your way to the candy store?" The word struck harder than Maya had expected. She stiffened, her grip on the envelope tightening, but she swallowed and replied softly, "I'd like to open an account. I've been saving." Susan chuckled, the sound carrying across the lobby, so that two waiting customers looked up. "An account? With what pocket change? I don't think we even open accounts for less than $100. Maya's cheeks burned, but she held her ground, sliding the deposit slip forward. "I have enough," she said, voice small but steady. Susan picked up the slip with exaggerated slowness, glanced at the amount, and let out a loud laugh, shaking her head. "Oh, this is adorable. You want me to make a whole account for this little pile? Sweetheart, this bank is for serious money, not babysitting funds." The customers who overheard shifted uncomfortably, a young man frowning, an older woman biting her lip, but no one spoke, and Susan leaned forward, her smile patronizing. "Here's what you can do. Go home, put that in your piggy bank, and when you're older, maybe then you'll be ready to do business with us. For now, why don't you wait at the side until your mom or dad can come in? We need an adult for this kind of thing anyway." Maya's throat tightened, humiliation pooling behind her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not here, not in front of strangers who might remember her as the girl who was laughed out of a bank. She nodded faintly, took her envelope back, and stepped aside, sitting on one of the leather chairs in the waiting area. Her legs swung nervously, her fingers fiddled with the flap of the envelope, but inside her chest, determination still pulsed. This money mattered, and so did she. What she didn't know was that at that very moment, the glass doors of the bank swung open, and in walked a woman whose presence alone could still a room. Evelyn Carter, tall, elegant, with silver strands woven through her dark curls, her tailored suit speaking of quiet authority, her eyes scanning the lobby with calm sharpness. To the customers, she was just another woman, but to the bank, she was something far more. She was a mother of the CEO himself, and though she never announced her title, people who knew her understood she carried weight not through name alone, but through the kind of dignity that commanded respect. As she walked in, her gaze fell on Maya, a small girl clutching an envelope with reddened eyes, and Evelyn's step slowed, her instincts stirring. Something had happened here, something that didn't sit right, and as she approached, She prepared to uncover it, unaware that within moments she would turn the entire bank upside down with nothing but her voice and the force of justice. Evelyn paused a few feet from the waiting chairs, studying the small tremble in Maya's hands as the girl worked the corner of her envelope like a worry stone. And when she spoke, her voice carried the gentle gravity of someone who had soothed many storms. "Sweetheart, are you waiting for someone or did something happen?" Maya looked up, startled, taking in the woman's calm eyes, the neat pearl earrings, the kind of presence that makes a room feel less sharp. For a second, pride tried to bolt her mouth shut, but it softened under the warmth of question. I wanted to open an account," she said, almost whispering. "I saved up. Chores, birthdays, everything." But the lady laughed. She gestured toward the counter, where Susan was tapping at a keyboard with theatrical importance, chatting with a man in a suit, and gesturing toward the ceiling, as if explaining the constellations. Evelyn's brows knit, not in anger yet, but in concern that was edged with steel. "The lady laughed?" she repeated, sinking gracefully into the chair beside Maya, so their faces were level. "At your savings?" Maya nodded, cheeks hot again. "She said this bank is for serious money, not piggy banks. She told me to wait until a parent comes." Evelyn let out a slow breath, holding Maya's gaze. "And is there a parent with you today?" Maya shook her head. "My mom's at work. She told me I could do it myself, that I'm old enough." She showed me how to fill the form. I practiced writing my name on the line. She unfolded the deposit slip, showing the neat, careful letters. Maya Johnson. The J a little too tall, the O pressed hard. Evelyn's eyes softened at the sight. There was reverence in how the girl cradled her paperwork, as if it were a passport to a future she'd earned. "May I see how much you saved?" Evelyn asked, not out of judgment, but as if she were asking to admire a painting. Maya opened the envelope, revealing a stack of ones and fives, a 10 creased down the middle, a handful of quarters tucked in a smaller zip bag. $132.75, she said with a flicker of pride that refused to die. "It took me a long time." "It's magnificent," Evelyn said without hesitation. "It's a beginning, and beginnings deserve doors that open, not faces that laugh." She stood, extended a hand, and when Maya hesitated, Evelyn added, "Would you mind if I walk with you to the counter? Sometimes adults listen better when there are more of us." Maya slipped her small hand in Evelyn's, and together they approached the teller line, drawing a few curious glances as the marble floor sent their footsteps backwards in faint echoes. Susan saw them coming and pasted on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Back again?" she said brightly to Maya, then turned to Evelyn with a professional nod. "Can I help you, ma'am? If you're here to assist her, we do require a parent or legal guardian for a minor's account. There are policies." Evelyn returned the nod, polite but unyielding. "Policies I'm sure you know how to apply with respect," she said. "I'd like you to treat this young lady as a customer. She's here to deposit her savings and inquire about a youth account. If you truly require a guardian, you can explain the steps without laughter." The last word was soft, yet they landed like a ruler striking a desk. Susan's eyes flickered, and for a moment her smile faltered before snapping back. "Of course," she said a little too brightly. "But to be clear, we don't open accounts for amounts that small. There are minimums and monthly fees. It wouldn't be in her best interest. She can save at home until she has enough." "Do you also recommend patients remove their own stitches until they can afford a surgeon?" Evelyn asked mildly. "Banks exist to steward money, not to shame it." A couple in the waiting area exchanged looks. The young man who had frowned earlier leaned forward slightly, like an audience member sensing the violinist is about to choose a harder piece. Susan tapped her keyboard harder than necessary, peered over the glass with an air of benevolent scolding. "Ma'am, I'm following protocol. If we open accounts for every child with a handful of change, we'd be here all day." "You weren't here for her at all," Evelyn answered. "You were laughing." Susan's cheeks blotched pink. "I chuckled," she said, then added hastily, to lighten the mood, "You know how kids get." Maya's small voice slipped in, "I wasn't joking." Evelyn placed her free hand on the counter, palms open. "Then let's start again. Please, explain the options for a youth saver." We can decide together whether it's best to open the account today or begin the application and schedule a time for a co-signer. But you will take her deposit, and you will give her a receipt. Susan blinked. A deposit without an account? Into a bank check, Evelyn said evenly, held and converted to a cashier's check in her name when her guardian arrives, if that's the path you choose, or into a custodial holding pending signature. There are policies for that as well. It was not a threat, but a demonstration of fluency, and Susan's shoulders stiffened. She looked like someone who had intended to perform a magic trick and found a seated judge in the front row. "Let me get my supervisor," she said finally, the smile evaporating. "Please do," Evelyn replied. "And while you're at it, gather the pamphlets for youth financial literacy you keep in that rack behind you, the ones you didn't offer her." Susan drew in a breath and stepped away, leaving them at the counter. Maya craned her neck up to whisper, "How did you know about the papers?" Evelyn's mouth quirked. "Because my mother taught me to read every sign in a room, especially the ones people pretend not to see." She squeezed Maya's hand. "Stand tall. You earned today." The supervisor arrived with practiced gliding walk, a tie exactly between navy and black, and a smile that announced he was here to smooth, not solve. His name tag read Bradley H., and he extended his hand to Evelyn first. "How can we make this right for you ladies today?" Evelyn gestured toward Maya. "By speaking to her," she said. Bradley pivoted smoothly. "Hello there," he said to Maya, kneeling slightly so they were closer to eye level. "What can we help you with?" Maya swallowed. "I want to deposit my savings and open an account for kids, please." Bradley nodded, and for a moment Evelyn allowed herself to exhale. Then he added, "Wonderful. Now, we do require a parent or guardian present, and there's a minimum opening balance of—" He glanced at Susan, who materialized with a stack of glossy pamphlets, relief evident on her face now that procedure stood like a wall between her and responsibility. "Of $200 for our junior saver," Bradley finished. "If you like, we can hold on to your envelope until your parent comes back." Maya flinched instinctively closer to Evelyn, clutching the envelope tighter. Evelyn's brows lifted a fraction. "Hold on to it where?" she asked. Bradley's smile stayed, but it thinned. "In our secure till, of course." Evelyn shook her head gently. "No, she will not be separated from her funds. If the bank will not open an account today, you'll accept a deposit into a cashier's check in her name, handing her the instrument and the receipt now, not later." Susan exhaled, annoyed. "We don't usually do that for minors," she said. Evelyn looked at her. "You don't usually laugh at them either. At least, I hope you don't." A murmur ran through the lobby, subtle but spreading. The older woman who had bitten her lip earlier stood a little straighter in her chair, and the security guard by the door, a tall man with kind eyes, shifted his weight, attentive. Bradley's tone stayed diplomatic. "I understand concern," he said. "Let me see what accommodations we can make. In the meantime, may I ask, are you her grandmother?" Evelyn smiled softly. "Today I am her advocate." Bradley blinked once. "Understood." He retreated to a back office with the pamphlets in hand, speaking in low tones to a woman at a desk. To the glass wall, the murmured conversation looked like two fish gliding past each other in an aquarium, their words air bubbles no one else could read. Susan remained at the station, reorganizing pens with unnecessary precision, then glanced up at Maya with a tight little smile. "It's not personal," she said, as if confiding a secret that absolved her. "It's just that these rules exist. Banks of standards." Maya looked at the marble, saying nothing. Evelyn's eyes never moved from Susan's face. "Standards do not preclude courtesy," she said. "They require it because they ask people to wait." Susan bristled. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to keep the line moving." Evelyn scanned the quiet line. "We seem to be moving." A man in a construction jacket let out a single laugh before smothering it into his sleeve. Bradley returned with a small folder and a measured nod. "We can issue a cashier's check in the child's name today, as you suggested," he said. "There will be a small fee." Evelyn tilted her head. "Waive it." "Pardon?" "If a teller can spend our time laughing at a child making her first deposit, the bank can spend a fee ensuring she leaves empowered, not diminished." Bradley hesitated, glanced at Susan, and weighed something invisible. "We can do that," he said finally. "We'll waive it." He turned to Maya. "Would you like to proceed with that today, and then come back with your parent to open your account?" Maya looked at Evelyn, the question heavy as a suitcase. Evelyn nodded. "If that feels right to you." Maya drew a breath that seemed to fill her small chest for the first time that morning. "Yes," she said. "Please." Bradley smiled genuinely then, a new expression that fit him better. "Excellent. We'll also prepare the forms so when you and your mom come back, it will be quick." He gestured to Susan. "Can you process the check?" Susan's smile returned, brittle around the edges. "Of course," she said, and slid a tray forward through the opening. "Place your envelope there, sweetie." Maya hesitated, then set the envelope down carefully as if laying a baby in a bassinet. Susan counted each bill with crisp snaps, the sound echoing in Maya's ribs like a drumline. 100, she announced then with faint surprise, and 32.75 cents. She glanced up, perhaps realizing for the first time that children's savings could equal discipline. Evelyn caught the flicker and said nothing. Bradley produced the printer's forms. The small machine chirped as it warmed. "Maya Johnson," he said, "please spell your name so we can make sure the check is perfect." Maya spelled it, the letters clean as seed in a row. The printer whirred. Susan stamped. Bradley typed. The choreography of banking began to look like service instead of gatekeeping. But still the earlier laughter lingered like a smell in the air, stubborn and sour. A woman near the entrance finally stood and approached gently. "Excuse me," she said to Bradley. "I heard what happened. I just wanted to say, I opened my first account with $20 when I was 16. It changed everything, to see my name on something official." She smiled at Maya. "You'll never forget this day, honey. Not because of them," she added, a quick look toward Susan, "but because you showed up." The security guard nodded from a station. "That part," he said, and the small chorus of affirmation wrapped around Maya like a shawl. Susan's jaw tightened. She busied herself with the stamp again, unnecessary clicks punctuating the moment. The cashier's check slid under glass at last. Crisp and official, her name printed in the kind of ink that refuses to fade. Maya stared, delighted and overwhelmed, tracing the letters with her eyes as if they might fly away. Bradley handed her the receipt as well. "Hold on to both," he said. "Bring them back with your mom, and we'll open your account. We'll also enroll you in our Youth Saver program. It gives a little bonus for deposits made from jobs like chores and community projects." He looked at Evelyn, then back at Maya. "You're exactly the kind of saver we want." A hush fell, the kind that happens when something lands true. Even Susan's pen stopped tapping. Evelyn rested a hand lightly on the counter. "Thank you," she said to Bradley. "We'll be returning soon." Bradley nodded, clearly relieved the waters had smoothed. But the river wasn't done bending. Evelyn had felt the undercurrent since she stepped through the door, and it pulled at her now with the insistence of memory. How systems change when accountability is not a visitor but a resident. She turned to Susan, keeping her tone even. "I would like your full name for my notes, please," she said, "and your branch manager's card." Susan's throat bobbed. "Why?" Evelyn held her gaze. "So that when I call later to discuss the training of frontline staff, I can cite specifics. Laughter has a way of disguising itself as lightening the mood unless we put a name to it." Susan drew herself up, the last of her armor scraping together. "I followed policy," she said sharply. "You came in here and made a scene. We have many customers to serve." Evelyn's head tilted, not unkindly. "And yet, here we are, served." She waited. The silence stretched. Bradley, sensing the temperature, slid a card across the counter. "Our branch manager is out to lunch," he said carefully. "This is her information. And I'll write down Susan's last name for you." He did, in neat capitals on the back of the card. "If there are concerns, please contact me as well. I'm the service supervisor." Evelyn slipped the card into her clutch. "I will." She turned to Maya, who clutched the check and receipt against her chest like a heartbeat. "Ready?" Maya nodded, a small smile beginning at one corner of her mouth. They stepped away from the counter together, and as they did, The glass doors whooshed open behind them, letting in a gust of street air and two figures, a woman in a navy suit whose stride carried the authority of decisions made daily, and a man in a security blazer stepped behind. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder, recognition sparking in her eyes before she smoothed it away. The woman scanned the lobby, her gaze settling briefly on Bradley, then shifting to Evelyn with a flicker of familiarity, as if she were trying to place where a piece fits in a larger puzzle. Susan straightened instinctively, smoothing her blazer and adjusting her hair, smiling wide at the new arrivals. "Welcome to Carter National," she chirped, the earlier edge gone as if scrubbed. The woman in the navy suit nodded once and kept walking, her heels soft thunder on marble, and as she neared, Maya's fingers tightened around Evelyn's. "Who is that?" Maya whispered. "Someone who listens," Evelyn murmured, and the words felt like a hinge turning. The lobby seemed to hold its breath, the next moment gathering itself like a wave before it breaks. The woman in the navy suit crossed the lobby with a presence that silenced the low hum of conversation, her steps measured, her gaze sharp, and though Maya had never seen her before, she felt the shift ripple through the bank, a change in air pressure like the seconds before a storm breaks. Susan's posture transformed instantly, her back straightening, her smile stretching with rehearsed warmth as if she were greeting royalty, and Evelyn's eyes narrowed just a fraction, because she knew that smile too well. The kind people were only when power walks into the room. The woman stopped at the counter, her ID badge swinging lightly from a lanyard, but before Susan could launch into her sugary greeting, Evelyn spoke, her voice calm but cutting to the stillness. "Maya, allow me to introduce you to Mrs. Evelyn Carter's daughter-in-law, the branch executive, and more importantly, the CEO's direct liaison." The hush deepened. Customers leaned in subtly, sensing the moment tipping. Susan's eyes widened almost imperceptibly before flicking back to the suited woman, realizing at last that the older lady she had dismissed as just another customer was in fact the mother of the man whose name was etched in gold on the wall plaque. Carter National Bank, CEO, James Carter. Evelyn let the recognition settle before continuing, her tone like silk wrapped around steel. "This young lady came here today with her savings, $132.75 she earned with honest work, and instead of being welcomed, she was laughed at." The words hung heavy, undeniable, and Maya's throat tightened with both fear and relief. Fear because all eyes were on her. Relief because at last the truth was being spoken by someone who carried weight. Susan stammered, I didn't mean. But Evelyn raised a hand, silencing her with a gesture so graceful it felt regal. The woman in the navy suit, Evelyn's daughter-in-law, turned her attention to Maya, kneeling slightly so her eyes were level with the girl's, her tone gentle yet brimming with authority. "Is that true, sweetheart? Did someone laugh at you for bringing your savings here?" Maya hesitated, then nodded, clutching her envelope tighter, though the cashier's check already lay safe in her bag. "Yes, ma'am. She said it wasn't serious money. She told me to go home." The woman's jaw tightened, her gaze slicing back to Susan, whose smile had crumbled into pale silence. "This bank was founded to serve everyone," she said firmly, her voice carrying through the lobby like a bell. "From the smallest deposit to the largest investment, every customer deserves dignity." A murmur of agreement rose from the waiting area, people nodding, whispering, "Exactly," and "That's right." The security guard stepped forward slightly, his broad shoulders squared as if ready to enforce not with force but with presence. Evelyn, standing beside Maya, folded her hands neatly in front of her. "Respect is not a courtesy you decide to grant," she said, her tone now carrying a faint tremor of fire. "It is the baseline of service, and today, in this very branch, that standard was broken." Susan's lips parted, words scrambling for purchase, but none could climb the wall of silence now surrounding her. Bradley, the supervisor, cleared his throat nervously. "Mrs. Carter," he said, addressing Evelyn, "we did process a deposit and issue the check. The situation is being handled." Evelyn's eyes shifted to him, cool and sharp. Handle would mean it never happened in the first place. The word struck like a gavel. The daughter-in-law straightened, pulling her phone from her pocket, tapping quickly. "James will want to hear this immediately," she said, referencing the CEO by his first name in a way that reminded everyone in earshot of the bloodline binding this moment. Susan paled further, realizing the stakes had just skyrocketed. Within minutes, as if conjured by the urgency of the call, the glass doors opened again, and a tall man in a tailored charcoal suit strode in, his pace quick, his expression stormy. James Carter, CEO, Evelyn's son, Maya's unexpected ally, entered the bank like a gust of fresh wind, scanning the scene. His mother standing resolute, a trembling girl clutching a bag, employees frozen in guilty stillness, and customers watching like jurors. He went directly to Maya first, crouching slightly to her level. "I'm James Carter," he said gently, "and this bank belongs to people like you, people who work hard and save. Did someone make you feel otherwise?" Maya's eyes widened, overwhelmed, but she managed to whisper, "Yes." James stood, turned to the counter, and his voice dropped into the register of command. "Who?" Silence stretched, suffocating, until Evelyn inclined her head ever so slightly toward Susan. James's gaze snapped to her, his eyes narrowing. "Step forward." Susan obeyed, trembling slightly, her earlier bravado stripped bare. "Sir, it was a misunderstanding. I didn't—" James cut her off, his voice precise. "You laughed at a child for bringing her savings to the bank? You told her it wasn't serious money, that she should go home." Susan's mouth opened and closed, searching for a softer version of the truth, but the eyes of every witness weighed heavy, and finally she stammered, I may have said something like that, but it was unacceptable." James finished. The word cracked like lightning. "This bank does not humiliate children. This bank does not humiliate anyone." He looked around the lobby, ensuring every customer heard. Every dollar saved is serious. Every customer is serious. If our employees don't believe that, they don't belong here. A wave of murmurs and scattered applause spread through the bank, customers emboldened by the spectacle of justice delivered in real time. Susan flushed crimson, tears pricking her eyes as shame overtook her defenses. Evelyn rested a hand on Maya's shoulder, steadying her. "You see," she whispered to the girl, "sometimes it takes sunlight to show where the cracks are." Maya nodded, still stunned, but she felt taller, her small chest swelling with pride. Not just for herself, but for the fact that her savings had become the center of a lesson larger than she could have imagined. James turned back to her, his expression softening. "Maya, we're going to set up your account today. Personally. No waiting, no fees. In fact, we're going to start something new in your name, the Maya Johnson Youth Savings Program, a program to encourage kids like you who work hard to start saving early." The crowd gasped softly, customers exchanging astonished looks, and Maya's lips parted in disbelief. "Really?" she whispered. "Really?" James said, smiling warmly. "And your first deposit will go into it right now." He glanced at Bradley, who nodded vigorously and began typing into the system, the printer already whirring. Susan stood frozen, humiliated, while Evelyn's eyes gleamed, not with triumph, but with the satisfaction of seeing justice flower where arrogance had tried to root itself. Maya clutched her envelope tighter, her heart racing. The humiliation she felt earlier now replaced with a strange, radiant glow of validation, as if the marble floors beneath her feet were no longer cold but solid ground on which she belonged. And as the receipt printed, the applause swelled again, no longer scattered but strong, reverberating through the lobby, sealing the moment into memory forever. The printer's hum faded into the steady heartbeat of the lobby, and for a suspended moment the marble floors, the high brass lamps, even the ticking wall clock seemed to lean toward Maya as Bradley slid the newly printed account packet and first deposit receipt across the counter. Her name, Maya Johnson, bold on every line that mattered. James stood beside her, sleeves subtly rolled as if to signal he was here to work, not just to be seen, and said gently, "We'll place your cashier's check right into your new account, and we'll start you with fee waivers and a small match from the bank for the next 3 months. You earned this." Maya's fingers trembled, grazing her own name as if it were a warm stone. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you," and the thanks seemed to pass through each person like light through glass. James turned to the lobby and raised his voice just enough. "For anyone listening, if your child wants to save, bring them. If the deposit is $5 or $5,000, we're building a bridge, not a gate. Applause scattered again, less like a spectacle now and more like a chorus of yes, this is how it should be. Evelyn watched, quiet pride softening the sharp set of her shoulders, then leaned close to Maya and murmured, "When you go home, tell your mother you open a door today, not just for yourself." Maya nodded, eyes bright. Susan stood off to the side, pale and stiff, fingers worrying the edge of a drawer. Guilt tugged at her face like a tide taking sand from under a castle, and at last she stepped forward, voice low. "Mr. Carter," she began, glancing at Maya. And Maya, she swallowed, words catching. "I was wrong. I made you feel small. That wasn't policy. It was me. I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air, fragile and late, but Evelyn turned, weighing it with the exact measure of a life lived in rooms where apologies either healed or hid. "What you do next will decide whether those words matter," she said softly. James nodded once. "Susan, take the rest of the day off," he said. "Tomorrow, you'll begin with our training director for bias and service retraining. You'll shadow at our community branch where we host youth workshops. We'll decide next steps after. This isn't punishment alone, it's repair." A murmur of approval rolled through the lobby. Even the security guard's posture eased, as if some invisible knot had loosened. Susan blinked, cheeks blotching, and whispered, "Understood," then looked at Maya and added, "I hope you let me earn your respect." Maya, surprised by the sincerity, hesitated, then nodded once, not absolving, not condemning, just marking the moment so it could become a beginning instead of an end. Form signed, account opened, the ritual complete. James invited Maya and Evelyn into a small glass-wall conference room off the main floor. Inside, the city's bustle cut to a faraway hush, and sun poured across the table like a blessing. "Two things," James said, sitting at an angle that kept the door and lobby in view, a habit born from years of leadership. "First, we're issuing a statement about what happened, not to embarrass anyone, but to make it clear what we stand for. Second, the Maya Johnson Youth Savings Program isn't a headline. It's a commitment. We'll create Saturday workshops, partner with schools, offer matches for deposits from chores, internships, and community service. I want your voice in this. Maya, tell us what kids your age need to learn." Maya blinked, stunned. "Me?" He smiled. "Who better?" She glanced at Evelyn, who nodded. "You are the expert on being 12 and brave." Maya laughed, small and real. "Okay," she said. "I think kids need to know how interest works, and how to not spend everything at once, and how to make money without, being old." James grinned. "That's our curriculum title. How to make money without being old." "Done." They all laughed. The sound easy, the kind that lifts a moment from important to human. A knock at the door. Bradley, holding a small envelope and a branded card. "For you, Maya," he said. "A welcome kit. And, if you like, your first debit card. It has daily limits set for youth accounts." Maya touched the card as if it were a rare shell. "I've never had one," she breathed. Evelyn's voice softened. "It's a tool, not a trophy. Use it wisely." Before they left the room, James asked, "Would you like to call your mother from my office? I'd be honored to tell her what you did." Maya's face lit, fear and pride mingling as she nodded quickly. They moved down a quiet hall past framed photos of the bank's earliest days, black and white images of a storefront and the first ledger, and entered a sunlit corner office where the city unfurled in glass and steel below. James dialed, then handed Maya the phone on speaker. It rang twice. "Hello?" Came a tired voice, warm even in weariness. "Mom," Maya said, a breathy rush. "I did it." "You did?" The voice brightened. "Baby, you did? I'm so proud of—" "She didn't just open an account," James interjected gently. "This is James Carter. I run the bank. Your daughter reminded us what we stand for today." She faced disrespect and answered with courage. "We're launching a youth savings program with her name on it." Silence. The shock kind that knocks the wind out of an ordinary afternoon. "Mr. Carter, I thank you," her mother said, voice cracking. "Maya, are you okay?" I'm okay, Maya said, smiling. I'm more than okay. A watery laugh. I'm coming to hug you at 5:01, her mother said. I'm clocking out at 5, and I'm coming straight there. We'll be here, James promised. And we'll fast-track the custodial cosign when you arrive. They hung up, and Maya pressed both hands to her cheeks, overwhelmed with joy that felt too big for her chest. Evelyn opened her arms, and Maya stepped in without hesitation, the embrace soft and fierce, a knot of the day finally untied. You handled yourself with grace, Evelyn murmured. Hold on to that more tightly than any card. By late afternoon, the lobby had thinned, but word travels along marble and glass faster than email. A few parents filtered in with curious children, lured by a rumor of a new program and a young founder. James had the team print a simple flyer, black letters on white paper, clean and earnest. The Maya Johnson Youth Savings Program. Starting today. Match deposits for chores, Saturday workshops. Every dollar deserves dignity. The security guard taped one to the door. The wind tried to lift it and failed, the tape holding firm. Bradley coached the teller through 3 new youth accounts, while Evelyn sat with Maya at a side table, showing her how to read the ledger lines on her portal printout. See this? Evelyn said, tapping the tiny interest column. Time is your friend. Most people don't realize that until time stops offering. Maya nodded, eyes wide. So if I put in $5 every week, you'll be teaching class? Evelyn teased, and Maya giggled. Across the room, Susan returned with her bag, having signed out. She paused, watching the small constellation forming. Children, flyers, a girl with new account teaching herself compound interest when elders help, and something like longing flickered in her face, the ache of having stood on the wrong side of the doorway and finally seeing what was inside. She walked over, tentative. Maya turned, guarded but open. I'm heading out, Susan said, wringing the strap of her bag. I know words only go so far. If you come back on Saturday, I'll be here, on my own time, to help set up the workshop tables. She swallowed. If you'll have me. Maya looked at Evelyn, who met Susan's gaze like a teacher, deciding whether a student had truly done the reading. We don't turn away volunteers, Evelyn said at last, but we don't forget why they're here. Susan nodded, relief and resolve meeting in her eyes. Understood. She left, shoulders lower, steps slower, as if laying down a weight she alone had been carrying. At 5:07, the glass doors parted and a woman in scrubs hurried in, hair tucked under a scarf, palms pressed the strap of a worn tote. She scanned the room, saw Maya, and the world telescoped to a single point as she broke into a run, bending to scoop her daughter into a hug that lifted her off the ground. For tending me too. Evelyn smiled. We tend each other or nothing grows. Evenings fell earlier. On a windy Thursday, Maya and her mother passed a bank on their way home. The lobby lights were dim, the cleaning crew's cart parked near the vault, and in the window, the flyer caught a street lamp's glow. Maya paused, looking at her reflection layered over the words. Mom, she said, voice soft, do you think it will stay good? When no one's watching. Her mother slipped an arm around her shoulders. It stays good because people keep choosing it, she said. Sometimes you'll be the one to choose it first. They walked on, and behind them the bank stood, not a fortress, but a place not perfect, but wider than before. At home, beneath the new certificate on the wall, Maya opened her notebook, the one with your dreams are serious on the inside cover, and wrote in neat letters, Today I deposited $15. The lady didn't laugh. She knew my name. She paused and added, I am saving for a bike and for college. I am saving for surprises, like kindness. She closed the book and slid it back onto the shelf, then lay in bed listening to the wind worry the trees, a sound like distant applause. In another part of the city, at a kitchen table cluttered with training manuals and a small plant with coin-shaped leaves, Susan wrote a note she wasn't required to send. Dear Maya, thank you for giving me the chance to change. I won't waste it. She sealed it, unsure she'd deliver it, knowing the more important delivery would be her daily work. And in a high office with a view of the river, James reviewed a report, paused at a chart showing a modest rise in youth accounts, and smiled. Not the numbers, But the story they represented, the one that began with a girl and an envelope and a door that almost stayed closed. He texted his mother, "You were right about sunlight." She replied 2 words, "Always is." The world did not tilt on its axis. No parades rolled, no symphonies swelled. But in one bank, on one block, a little more dignity circulated, coin by coin, choice by choice, and a girl who had been told to go home carried a card and a name and a future that fit in both hands.